Hello, Escape Collective podcast listener. I'm Dane Cash, and I'm pretty serious about bike racing, so you can imagine just how excited I get this time of year, what with the Tour de France and all. And I'm also excited for you, because if you sign up to join Escape Collective right now, your first month will only cost $1. That means you'll get full access to all of our bike racing news and analysis, tech coverage, and everything else in between here on podcast channels and also over the website. So you can expect us to be pretty busy over the next few months, and if you want to read or listen to what we have to say without hitting paywalls or missing members-only episodes of our podcasts, or if you want to talk bikes with the rest of our awesome community on our Discord server, it's a pretty awesome opportunity to join up. Plus, you'll be supporting everything we're doing here, and we really and truly cannot do this without your support. Head on over to escapecollective.com/TDF to sign up, and remember, if you do it now, your first month will only cost you $1. Hello and welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dane Cash, and it is, well, it's rest day time.
Finally got a rest day.
Finally got rest day number one here, Cosmo Catalano, bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano.
And rest day enthusiast.
Rest day enthusiast. Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. And given the nature of when we record during the Grand Tours, I'll have to remember that's what you are.
Yes.
Rest day enthusiast Cosmo Catalano, how are you feeling 9 days into La Tour de France?
I'm feeling pretty good. Some of the stuff we talked about happened. Some of it didn't. We have some more data points, but we have a very active race, and I think a very up in the air race. You know, I don't think anything's been turned on its head, but no one's really, blown up, lost the race. Haven't been any earth-shattering crashes. All due respect to Mats Pedersen, I think it's gone about as good as a first week can go for a lot of the GC contenders.
I think that's a good way to frame it. I think it remains quite close overall. I think there is a general sense of Tadej Pogačar is doing quite well, but I personally feel similarly to the way that I felt after a few days at the Giro, where he was the favorite, and I didn't necessarily think he was any more favored to win after he did a nice job in the first few days. He obviously did go on to win that race quite handily. But yeah, let's talk about all that stuff as we discuss, well, what are we going to talk about today on this show? We're going to talk about stages 4 through 9. Cosmo is giving me the hand signals, which is very helpful. 4 through 9.
You start with 4, and then you just hold up your other hand.
And that makes 9.
Yeah.
That's math.
Yeah.
Because we, of course, already did a show talking about stages 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully, you will have already been listening to the Tour daily pods that Kelly Fretz and company are doing from the ground, breaking down the action after each day, giving you the vibes, or the vibes, as we heard discussed on
the Weebuses,
on 1 or 2 episodes. And yeah, we're going to talk about some of the, we're going to analyze the racing. How about that?
Sounds good.
We're going to talk about stages 4 through 9. We're going to talk about where things stand among, well, the various jerseys, or at least 2 of them, the points and the overall battle. I think those are the big interesting ones thus far. Current perspective on Pogačar versus Vingegaard versus everyone else. We'll also talk about what's coming up at the Tour de France in this week's show. So, Cosmo, stages 4 through 9, basically week 1 and a little bit more. What is the Cosmo Catalano headline?
I would say Pogačar confirms form. Vingegaard still a question mark.
Pogačar confirms form, comma, Vingegaard still question mark.
Question
more
mark.
At 11.
Yeah. Well, I was going to do the well, yeah. I kind of like more at 11 better, actually. I was going to do the Bettridge's rule of headlines, but
people won't know what that means.
No, and
very soon.
It doesn't really work without text anyway. So
well, that's also true. But the news would come on at 6 and 11.
Oh, you're saying that the news at 11? Yes.
Yeah.
Details at 11. People still say details at 11, even though they don't
I know.
What
I'm just saying I don't know that young people watch the news that happens at 6 and 11.
But they still say it, right? I feel like I've heard someone ironically use that phrase. A youth ironically use that phrase.
Yeah, I mean, we do still say things like rewind and hang up, even though you're not winding the tape in a tape and putting a phone on a receiver. Anyway, I digress.
Yes.
Good headline.
Let's do some stages.
You want to tell us how the various races within the race were won thus far?
Yeah, stage 4, the day that I did not think would be a big GC day, turned out to be a big GC day. Although it almost didn't, but it did because UAE really just clobbered everybody going up Glibier. They didn't make the difference in the GC race. They got it down to about 8 people. And Pogacar said he was waiting to make his attack as late as possible because of the headwind. I think a lot of it, too, may be stuff they had kind of figured out about Vinigo's form based on the previous couple stages on hills there. But he really attacked very late in the climb and really seemed to go aggressively at the hairpins, made his gap eventually, not because he seems so much faster at threshold like a climber, but because he was able to put out more power coming out of the hairpins till eventually Vinigo couldn't match it. Had to kind of ease off a little bit. Came over the top with 8 seconds. It got as close as 6. But Pogacar, after the stage, he said he had studied the descent, and it definitely feels that way. The first couple corners, they were wet. He was very hesitant. And then at about 10K to go to the finish of the stage, so all descending down to the line, the gap went from 11 seconds to 15 to 20, and suddenly Vinigo was in the second group, and Pogacar was soloing away to the victory. So gained 40 seconds.
Really looked like he Pogacar was just hitting everything, every possible moment he could gain time. He did within that last stretch on the climb there, or the descent. Sorry, stage 5.
I'm still stoked on this sprint. It was so good. It was the perfect sprint for Cav to take his 35th win. Astana dropped him off at 1K and let him do his Cav thing. And it's just, I think from 700 meters to go to the point he launches the sprint, he bumps into 8 other riders, or has 8 contacts with other riders. None of them are very aggressive. It's more just kind of bouncing off, almost using the slow down instead of hitting the brakes. He does micro sprints, but they're always in the middle of the group. There's no wind anywhere near him. He's moving up with minimal effort. When he sees an opening, he just goes. He's through it before you can even tell it's there. Got maybe a little break. Pascal Ackermann kind of launched a little early and a little kind of right. Didn't do a lot of deception, just kind of went for it. Cav got that wheel and was like, cool, and accelerated, went to the other side of the road, knew no one was going to reel him back in. Just a very beautiful, like emblematic of what made Cavendish the greatest Tour de France stage winner of all time. It would have been boring if it had been a regular lead out and he'd won, or if there had been a crash or a relegation and he'd won. So I'm glad it went down this way.
We, and by we I mean I did like a GIF breakdown of the final kilometer, and it's pretty, from the overhead shot, it's just awesome to watch. You can see him just being in the right place at the right time over and over and over again, and that meant disconnecting himself from his own lead out. Yeah, we can talk about that in a little bit. Stage 6.
Less clustered of a sprint, a lot faster. Uno X went all in, leading out, and Vanderpool put in a big pull earlier too, so a lot of space. Arnaud Delis went a little early. Grunewagen sussed out that wheel, thought that was a good wheel, and got himself into a situation where it was really just him pedaling hard against Philipsen pedaling hard, and came out on top. And my feelings about the Batman glasses aside, it was, I think, a nice little bit of redemption for Grunewagen, who's understandably kept a low profile since some sprinting incidents early in his career.
Yeah, and just a show of speed, honestly. That was maybe a little bit more boring compared to the stage 5 win, but pretty classic good win.
And Philipsen finally got relegated.
He did finally get relegated, which I thought was interesting because the stage... Well, let's talk about that after. Okay, let's come back to it.
For the hot take section.
Yeah. Stage 7, one rider did a time that was shorter than everyone else's. I mean, I don't know. How was stage 7?
Okay, so actually, I thought Remco didn't look that great. I thought he looked really shaky. His cornering was, I think, bad at times. Fortunately, he's real fit. He would blow a corner and then sprint out of the saddle for an extra 5 seconds to compensate. I never really looked in danger of losing the stage, provided he could stay on the bike. I thought Pogacar looked really good. He hasn't always looked super comfortable on a TT bike. Really looked dialed, really looked like he'd done his recon homework. Vinigo, I think he looked off. I think he salvaged a pretty good result, all things considered, but he normally looks like he is almost strapped into the position. Like he just doesn't move. And he did a lot of rocking, a lot of being in heavy gears. Even his helmet looked kind of sideways. But, it wasn't a result that deviated much from what we expected, and it wasn't, a race-ending performance from anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it was the 1 and 2, I think, went as they had been expected in terms of pre-stage betting odds. Evenepoel won, Pogacar was second, and the gaps weren't huge. I think I want to come back to Evenepoel in a bit because I think he deserves credit for taking this win, even if he was expected to take this win. But in general, yeah, just like you said, nobody lost the race just because of their time. None of the big favorites lost the race just because of their time trial. And honestly, the top 4 GC riders finished in the top 4, not in the order that they're currently standing on GC, but they were all there. Evenepoel, Pogacar, Roglic, and Vingegaard, all there.
You going to point out,
I think, this race.
Who tied for the top non-GC finisher was?
Kevin
Vacquelin. Kevin Vacquelin, the guy who I said he's already done his thing and was done for the Tour. Had a super strong performance.
In the race of truth, you have to be a fit person. So obviously he's a good racer, and he's just chomping at the bit to win another stage and prove bike racing analyst Cosmo Catalano wrong.
Technically speaking, I think he was behind Campenarts, even though they were scored at the same time.
Yeah, he was a few tenths of a second back on Campenarts. But yeah. Also, you called him a non-GC rider, but if you think about it, if he gets into enough breakaways, he could work himself.
Should we move this to the hot takes section? Because that seems
hot takes. Kevin Vacquelin can recoup 1 hour and 9 minutes. Hot take. All right, stage 8, another sprint.
Yeah. Uphill, the special kind of sprint.
Yes, it was
big uphill. Binyam Girmay, they said the team said they'd started looking at this last December, and it is pretty perfect for him. He also had really good legs. He said, there's 2 guys, Van Aert and Van der Poel, who can challenge him here. Neither did. Won pretty easily, pretty convincingly, and honestly looks very solid as a green jersey finisher at this point, winner at this point in the race overall.
I'll tease this. I think there was another rider who could have challenged him, honestly looked faster to me in the finish and was positioned not adequately enough to take advantage of that. We'll come back to that. Stage 9, the stage we just watched today, because we're recording on Sunday evening, the gravel stage. I thought it was a really fun stage to watch. I had a blast watching it. What was your takeaway? And how was it won? Same.
I feel like I got my money's worth. I feel like if I hadn't seen the stage and looked at just the results, I would feel about the same as I did on the Giro stage.
That's a good point.
The difference here was guys went for it. We saw a couple of GC riders, specifically Remco and Pogacar, at least go off the front. I think Remco was dead serious when he went away at 70K, 77K, that he wanted to blow up the race right there. He wanted to take the 3 GC, him, Vingegaard, and Pogacar, ride up to the break, ride off the front of the break, and get all the time they could possibly get. And I think Pogacar was maybe okay with that, and Vingegaard definitely wasn't. Didn't pull through at all. Later in the race, around 20K, we saw Pogacar attack on really deep gravel, like visibly like sand, except huge chunks of rock. I think that may have been spur of the moment. I think he may have just been like, you know what? Something bad is probably going to happen here. I'm just going to get to the front. Credit to Visma for being completely on it. There were, it was a 2 bike length gap for Pogacar, and then Christophe Laporte, and then Matteo Jorgensen. And Laporte actually fell off the pace, and Jorgensen, battled his way up there and sat on the wheel. And then when he got the call to drop off the wheel and bring Vingegaard back, immediately dropped off the wheel and brought him back. Really solid teamwork from a team that has maybe struggled these classics-like stages. So GC group kind of came in together, and we got a really good stage win from Anthony Turgis, who still at this point in time may not know what to make of it. He just looked kind of stunned and smiling. The whole time.
I found that quite wholesome to watch. Yeah, I think also that's a really good point you made about if you just looked at the results, it would be hard to know how entertaining the stage was to watch. I'm sure. I feel like it was similar to when you hear soccer fans talk about how great a match is if it's a 0-0 draw. Yep. And we Americans like to make fun of that because, British people do that a lot. But here, this is a great example of how it could be entertaining, even if neither GC rider really took a big advantage, any advantage, honestly, because they all came in together. All right, that's how stages 4 through 9 were won. Let's break down some of those talking points that we had teased before. First, let's talk about the sprint battles. I want to talk about Alpecin and how, they've got to be disappointed. And not just the sprints. Mathieu van der Poel as well has been just underwhelming for being Mathieu van der Poel, for being the world champion, for being the rider who just crushed everybody this spring. He, as a stage hunter, has been mostly, I was going to say relegated to like playing second fiddle, but that's confusing because of the meaning of the word relegated. He has been playing second fiddle mostly to Philipsen, but on the days where you would think he would have had a chance, he wasn't there really. Thinking of stage 9 today, he was in a second group that didn't really make up much ground on the lead group. And then, Philipsen, I think they've got to be disappointed because of how close he's gotten over and over again. However, the reason I'm bringing all this up is that I actually think that Philipsen's not to go back to soccer, but his expected goals right now are probably, they're still high. I think if he's a soccer player, his XG is good. If he's a baseball player, we're saying his peripherals are good. All of that to say, team is probably disappointed, and they have every right to be. But I still think Philipsen will be the sprinter on the pure sprint stages to come in this race. He has been fast. He has been there over and over again. Positioning hasn't quite worked out his way. And then in that sprint against Girmay that we saw most recently, that was not his favored terrain. I've seen him do a really impressive sprint uphill at the Tour of Utah when he was like 21. But the field at the Tour of Utah, not quite at the same level.
Not quite the same caliber.
And I think Girmay uphill is just, he's hard to beat right now. But long story, quite long. I think Philipsen still, I'm picking him to win flat sprint stages to come in this Tour.
I wonder how much of that is a factor of Van der Poel, just because he's been historically pretty critical in a lead out role. He's done a good job kind of as a drop-off rider, a guy who kind of like Astana did for Cav gets people up to the final K, but he hasn't looked quite as strong. I think he might just be tired. Honestly, he had an incredible and very long stretch of dominance in the classic season. He, even at the end of that, looked a little bit tired. Still had a great result at Liège, but wasn't the active rider we saw earlier in the spring. I think he might just be like that. The physical consequences of doing what he did earlier this year may still be kind of holding him back from being super peak at July. We've seen him come into the Tour not great in the past. I think he looks better than that. But today we saw him in a move where you're like, ooh, this is an intriguing move. We got a lot of powerful riders in this second group, and just didn't really do anything. Rolled through. Yeah.
And if that's the case, I kind of wonder what Philipsen will do and how this team will play things moving forward. And there are still some sprint stages ahead, by the way. We'll talk about that later. But will Philipsen alter his approach in the finales at all? Maybe without confidence that Van der Poel is going to set him up, because if he can surf wheels in the way that, say, Mark Cavendish did on the stage that Cavendish won, then I think Philipsen could win a bunch more stages. I don't know that he is capable of that. I don't know. I'm not saying he's not, but I don't know that he is. But I wonder if that's going to make them change their approach. Yeah, Philipsen, probably bummed, but I still have faith that he's going to do well. However, the green jersey does look very comfortably on the shoulders of Biniam Girmay right now, who we knew he could do the harder sprints. That's something that he's done well in his career thus far. But he did win a pretty pure sprint, though, to get his first win in this race. And he also has been very consistent. And that is, unsurprisingly, that's what you need to win that green jersey. So now he's got 2 stage wins, and he's been up there in a bunch of intermediates, and he will be there in intermediates that I don't think Philipsen can survive to get to. Yeah, I like Biniam a lot to take that green jersey. I think it's going to be really hard to get that off his shoulders, even if Philipsen wins every other sprint stage.
Yeah, and Intermarché is all in for it. Like, they kind of came here with 2 guys, and they've shifted more to Biniam and Green, and they have Herb and Tyson like mopping up extra points at intermediate sprints and doing work to kind of make things a little trickier for the other people chasing that jersey. I think today at stage 9, we saw him get in that intermediate move with I don't think he had much intention to win the stage. Not that he's bad on gravel, but I think it was really more if he gets up in a group, because points go back to like 30th or something.
They do, yeah.
So if he is the only green jersey, or even if he's just ahead of the other sprinters, we saw Arnaud Delis, who we'll talk about in a moment, looked a little beat up today, didn't have the best luck, but like all these other sprinters are fighting kind of stay with the group. Biniam's up here coming in. What did he finish today? 9? Like 12, something like that?
Finished 9th, yeah. And he took 8 points, I think, for that or something. It's not a ton, but like enough points to be worth it.
That's 8 against 0, maybe. I don't know who's second in the competition. But it's
Philipsen, and Philipsen took 0. Yeah.
It's that sort of, grab all the points we can grab. And the thing is his fitness, the thing that makes him good at tougher stages and uphill sprints, also makes him good at this kind of point snatching, like we saw Eric Zabel used to do. Just a guy, or Tor Hushovd, who would get up in these breakaways and mop up points in places other sprinters couldn't find them. Might not necessarily be the fastest guy in the race, but that's not what the title is for. The title is for who can get the most points.
Yeah, as you know, I tend to prefer when a more versatile rider does well in the points classification. We've talked about this, ad nauseum. So I'm very happy with it so far. I also I do. Part of me really wants, if you win a jersey in a Grand Tour, I want you to have won a stage. Like I don't know. Maybe that's not fair of me to want that, but Biniam's already got two, so I'm happy. I'm happy about it.
I think I feel like we previously discussed like jersey or stage win, and I think pretty much everybody, even though the jersey is harder to get, right? Because there's like 5 different jersey wearers in the Tour de France, in every Tour de France, and there's 21 stage winners. In theory, 21 stage winning opportunities.
Right.
I think most people would still prefer the stage win because you're the guy that won that. You were the fastest that day. Nobody beat you.
I think with the exception of the overall, that's probably true.
Fair.
Yeah. But I think in Girmay's case, I'm just glad that if he does go on to win the jersey, he already has the 2 stages in the bag. He's not a stageless points winner, which we have seen in the past. I think Sagan did it twice, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I like seeing that. All right. So Girmay, I don't know. I feel pretty confident that he's going to keep green. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah. I again, not a betting man, but if I were, I would put money on it. Depending on, the risk adjusted return. Everything he needs is there. It is really cool. Like it was all the interviews. Eurosport's done an amazing job of like when a team wins, they get a ton of interviews with people you probably haven't even heard of who ride for the team. Like they just run up to him after the finish and stick a mic in their face. And to a rider, every person on Intermarché talks about how high the morale in the team is right now because of the way Biniam is riding. And that's like, you gotta appreciate that stoke. It brings a smile to your face.
I also appreciate listeners. You should know this, listeners, because it's an underrated, it's an unheralded thing that happens actually after a stage that really helps the rest of the team at Escape thrive, which is a particular person will get audio of all of these interviews so that we have a full 360 view of what everyone is saying. And we're able to write our stories with just better perspective. So unheralded performance from Cosmo Catalano. Really appreciated.
Thanks,
Dane. At this tour so far.
I appreciate the recognition.
All right. Biniam, we think he's going to stay in green. All right, I want to talk about Arnaud Delis. So I think Arnaud Delis actually was the rider. That's the rider I was hinting at earlier, who was capable of possibly beating Girmay in that sprint, that uphill sprint. Didn't happen. And I think it didn't happen because he was not positioned adequately. It was a tough positioning battle for him to win because he had to come from a little ways back. And then I don't think he went in the correct direction. I think he picked the wrong side to go on. But even when I was watching the overhead replay after having already seen it, trying in my head to come up with okay, what should he do here? Even I on replay couldn't really have come up with a great strategy. Anyway, that said, in terms of speed, fitness, I think Arnaud Delis is really knocking on the door of a stage win. And I think I have to think he's going to get it because he should be able to survive into the race a little bit better than others because he can climb quite well. Yep. He did win the GP Quebec last year, for instance. And more broadly, I think he's a really, really promising rider for the future. And we already knew that. I mean, we talked about him.
I have been, again, overly harsh, perhaps, because he comes with a lot of hype, but he looks incredibly fit. I've never seen him look so fit. I'm actually slightly nervous that he may be feeling like he needed to be more slender, because he's a thick man, like very muscular, very big. And he looks very lean now. Like there are lines in his face, kind of around his lips that weren't there before. And, hopefully that is just fitness. He's not, starving himself or anything, but
he did deal with it. He dealt with health issues earlier this season as well.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, I'm just saying he looks like he is keyed up and dialed to get over the mountains, get through this tour, be a contender for every sprint finish he can be. That's kind of what I'm going for.
Well, hopefully it will pay off for him. That the fact that he's been so close, probably starting to get frustrating for that Lotto team, which it's funny, there's been a bunch of different stages won by, I don't want to say surprising winners in every case. We've gotten plenty of unsurprising winners like Tadej Pogacar, but there have been 3 French winners. First and foremost, Arkea has won a stage.
Arkea and Total, like the
Total Energies has won a stage.
Retirement community team.
Intermarché has won 2 stages, and I think it's been a really great tour for the stage hunters thus far. We've had a bunch of sprints, and yet it hasn't really been that boring, which is good because I think there's a risk when you have too many sprints, it's going to get boring. But basically, every one of those sprints has been, fun to watch, entertaining. It's come with a storyline. All that said, Lotto is one of the teams that is, I think, probably not loving how things have gone thus far. At the
Although the blogs, the Victor Campenart's video blogs are very funny and very good. And he somehow gets in the middle of the Tour de France other people to record a couple seconds talking about an incident that happened in the race. So,
all right, let's take a little break. All right, let's talk about the GC battle that we have seen thus far at the Tour. Haven't seen that many major head-to-head battles on the climbs. I mean, we've seen Pogačar try his luck with some attacks, and credit to him for constantly giving it a go. This has been the 9 stages so far where there hasn't been a whole lot or huge gaps made. It's not for lack of Pogačar putting in attempts, and I appreciate that from him. All that said, I feel like Vingegaard has matched Pogačar's form pretty well so far. And this is kind of what you were talking about earlier. I think a lot of the success that Pogačar has had so far hasn't been so much about him doing more watts per kilo for 20 minutes. It's been him, doing better accelerating for brief moments.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing that is weirding me out a little bit is every time a Visma rider is asked about, or even Vingegaard is asked about form, he's like, we expect it to be way further down now. And I'm like, where were you expecting to lose, 3-4 minutes, right? Like, there haven't been that many stages where short of a collapse, he was going to lose that much time. I feel like there are some games being played here, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of, Visma, no matter what happens, is going to be like, well, this is better than we expected, so we're totally happy. Like, that is the line they're going to keep saying no matter what. Pogačar said something interesting at the end of today's stage, was that this was the easiest first week he's had in a Tour physically, which is, after what you said, with him constantly attacking, like, I wonder if he's also playing this game. If he, because every other rider seems like they're like, man, what a horribly hard start to the Tour. So I don't know if there's still this kind of gamesmanship. We haven't seen, kind of a fully operational battle station from either of the lead contenders.
I think both teams are playing the mind games in their own specific ways. What you say about Visma is definitely true. And it's over and over again. It's true. Every time, no matter what happens, they are like, oh yeah, we're happy with that. We're happy with that. We're happy with that. I kind of feel like that actually will make sense if, in fact, Vingegaard is in good shape to really apply pressure in the high mountains, because that's what they're betting on. And I think that's actually the right strategy. I think that's the right tactic from them as a team, to put all of their eggs in that basket, because that is where the big differences can be made. If you look at Pogačar, what he's done so far, for all of his efforts over and over again on these handful of GC stages, doesn't have that huge of a gap so far. Whereas, like, if Vingegaard drops him high in the mountains, if it's like a 2,000 meter elevation or higher steep climb, he could get minutes. And I think that is the right play to do that. I don't know that he's in the form, but tactically that's how they should play it.
We have, the gap now at stage 9 is 1 minute and 15 seconds. And we have had multiple stages in all of the previous 2 Tours de France where Pogačar has lost that much time and more on a single stage. So on paper, I agree. I don't know if this wait for Vingegaard to get into peak performance is really going to play out, because you got to remember, like, UAE has looked really good. UAE has 2 other riders in the top 10. I feel like on any day that Pogačar isn't feeling good, they might send Almeida or Ayuso up the road and be like, all right, Visma, there you go. Have fun. Obviously, Remco is in second. We should talk about Remco. I'm sure we will at some point. But, like, I don't know that the comparisons to previous years are really going to hold for the rest of this year's Tour, just because of serious structural differences in the two favorites teams.
Visma was really good today, stage 9. Otherwise, in the high mountains, they are very deficient compared to years past and compared to this year's UAE team.
To quote Grisha Nierman, they are the best team in the hectic.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's what
Grisha always gives us good quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think, to go back to the mind games, I think Pogačar's kind of playing mind games a little bit too. I think he's a little bit miffed at the way that Visma has been racing. I think he's probably a little bit miffed at Visma's mind games. And I think he's also starting to show it himself, So today, for instance, both he and Remco kind of addressed the fact that Visma wouldn't work with them. And Remco was not pleased that Jonas Vingegaard would not come through. And then Pogacar said that he thought that Visma might be underestimating the other riders in the race. They're only focused on him, which my thought is, yeah, that's what they should be doing. I don't think they should be focusing too much on Remco or Roglic. I think the tactic should be operate as if Pogacar is the rival and try to beat him in the high mountains. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it was because Vingegaard, crashed super hard 3 months ago and isn't in 100% form. But yeah, I think Pogacar is trying to apply some pressure in the media himself. But yeah, let's talk about Remco, because I think, first of all, his time trial was great from a results perspective, even if it didn't look great. And he won a Tour de France TT that, yes, he was favored to win, but we have seen Pogacar and Vingegaard be absolutely untouchable in Tour de France TTs. And as I've now said like 37 times, Remco is a really good rider. And if he did nothing else but do the time trials that he does, I feel like he would get somehow more credit. But it's because he's a GC rider that people mostly talk about what he hasn't done, and I feel bad for him.
Or what he can't do.
Yeah, and so I just want to point out, he just won a time trial at the Tour. He beat Pogacar on a TT, beat Roglic, he beat Vingegaard. That's hard to do.
I am a perennial Remco, not hater. I don't hate him. I like to kind of
critic. I'm
not even a critic, like a gadfly. I'm like, yeah, okay, he won a Vuelta, but also he's maybe not like a top tier GC contender. There's nothing wrong with that. He's still really good at riding a bike. And to see him 33 seconds down, looking incredibly strong, even in the mountains. Like, we haven't had a ton of high mountains. We haven't had a summit finish, but he has looked very good in terrain he hasn't necessarily looked good on. And honestly, I'm like, this is like me recanting my entire philosophy of bike racing, but having Mikel Landa on Soudal Quickstep really seems to be helping him.
Yes.
Having another person, another body in the group who is not going to attack you, who's been there before, who can get you a bottle, can tell you what to look for, like, that's huge. And I don't know that Remco has really had that before. I'm really curious to see what happens when they get into the meat of this Alpine or a Pyrenean competition.
I mean, I don't know. We at this juncture, hard to say whether he'll be able to survive in the mountains. I honestly kind of doubt that he won't get dropped. Or to put it differently, I think he probably will get dropped in the high mountains once or twice. But I will point out that so much is so often made of team strength and how often a team is the reason a rider did or didn't win a race. Even if in that race, I'm talking stage races here specifically, even if the one rider who did win both was the best climber and the best time trialist. And if you're the best time trialist and the best climber in the race, pretty hard not to win. Because you need to get an advantage somewhere if you want to win a race. Your team can't do that for you. So if you're a really, really good time trialist, you can get an advantage on everybody else in the time trial, and having a good team to chase down the climbers can secure your win. And vice versa. If you are a really, really good climber, your team can put the pressure on everybody and drop them. And then even if they gain some time on you in the TT, that's fine. You can win. If you're the best at both, like Vingegaard has been, for instance, last year, Pogacar has been this multiple times before, what are your rivals going to do? How are they actually going to beat you, even if they have a better team? Because if you are always able to chase down their actual leader, they're not going to beat you. And the reason I'm saying this, wide-ranging thing is that I think Evenepoel is one of the few people in the world who does have the time trial to actually beat Pogacar or Vingegaard. We have now seen that. It has been proven. And because of that, a team really does matter. Because what if Mikel Landa actually helps him not get dropped on a day or two in the mountains? And what if he manages to stay on a 33-second gap there or thereabouts through the rest of the race and takes that disadvantage into that final time trial? Unlike literally everybody else on the planet, he can actually beat Pogacar and Vingegaard on a TT. So in so many, there's so many times when I hear people say like, oh, so-and-so's team is the reason why they're not winning, or vice versa, so-and-so's team is the reason why they are winning. When in reality, it's so often not the case. It's the fact that they're just not good enough. But I think this is a different situation where Remco's team can make a huge difference because he can actually win these TTs. So Mikel Landa, could be the reason that Evenepoel certainly ends up on a podium, because right now I think he's a favorite to end up on the podium at the very least. And yeah, maybe more. Maybe Mikel Landa is the reason he closes a gap down to Vingegaard or Pogacar at a key moment in this race. Roglic, team has been okay.
Yeah, I mean, Vlasov has continued his banger of a year, doing tons of really good support, despite being, I think, a credible GC threat himself. Had a bad crash today. A lot of people were nervous about it. Seems like he was okay. But yeah,
it's hard to say at this juncture, but it didn't look good on TV.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't look good initially, and then it seemed actually like his mechanic, instead of being like, "Whoa, bud, let's assess your head injury," was like, "Get back in the race."
Yeah, and, it was a very like.
You couldn't tell if he was staggering or if it was just like
cycling,
trying to stand up in road shoes.
It's hard to say. Yeah. Watch on TV.
But I will say the team the doctor's car was like talking to him constantly. Like it wasn't like pull up and we'll give you a bandage. It was like they were yelling at him, hey, do you know where you are? Do you need bike service? Are you okay? When they went to bandage him up, they were still talking the whole time. Like I didn't catch any of the ambient, but I would imagine there was a lot of kind of assessing what day is it? You know where you are, what happened.
Right. Making sure that he was not concussed, basically.
And he did a lot of like looking to the moto camera and be like, guys, it's okay. I'm all cut up, but it's okay.
Right. So. And he did end up finishing with the main group today. He's currently sitting 11th. He, unfortunately for him, Derek G was in that breakaway. So he got bumped out of the top 10 because Derek G jumped into it. But Vlasov looking okay. The rest of four, I mean, let's talk about Roglic. He's just up and down.
I meant more of a like the team has looked good supporting Roglic. But yeah, I thought he looked great on stage 4. I thought stage 4 was the best I've seen him kind of climbing, not trying to beat one teammate, even when another teammate is in the lead of the race. It's a weird reference to last year's Vuelta. But yeah, he looked really good, really rode within himself. Like he was at the back of the group. He never really challenged with an attack, but never seemed like he was getting crushed either. And then on other days, he has just looked like he was in outer space. Today, kind of being one of those days. There were a couple of times he was dropped out of the group, and you're like, "What is he? How is he back here? How does this happen?"
Yeah, I mean, I assume the terrain has something to do with it. I mean, the gravel is something that I don't think Roglic likes as much as Pogacar does. But yeah, he has not looked. Put it this way, I think he's looked a little bit less good than I thought he would look so far. I had actually had higher hopes for him coming in. It's certainly still all to play for. He's down at the moment by 136. That's not an insurmountable advantage. But I haven't seen anything from Roglic to suggest that he could actually challenge to win. The way that I think with Vingegaard, the way that he was able to respond to Pogacar on the Galibier when Pogacar was actually trying to attack on the climb part, to me suggested that Vingegaard is close enough to being in form that maybe there is this chance that he can work his way into form in the final week. I don't know that I get that confidence from Roglic. Okay, there's a GC battle, and I think that's kind of what we have planned. What about that Ineos team that used to win this race all the time?
Carlos Rodriguez. He's in the mix.
He's been up there. The other rider we've talked about, like as a future tour winner for this team.
Yeah, well, some people have talked about him as a future winner.
The shade.
No, I don't want to. It's not shade. It's just like he's so good at so many different things, right? It hurts me. It hurts my soul a little bit when Tom Pidcock comes to a race like this, and we saw him at Tour de Suisse, and he wasn't bad. He was better than he's ever been, and he laid it out very clearly, point by point. After Tour de Suisse, this is the best numbers I've had in a TT. I'm 6 overall. That's really good. That's better than I've ever been in a week-long stage race. And then we go into this stage 4, kind of not, yes, a GC day, but like not the typical Tour de France GC day. And he's in the Gruppetto. Today, he, got out and did what he does, stage hunts, but didn't really ride in a way that seemed to me to favor his abilities. Like, he's a very good bike handler. There were so many loose sections, steep sections, places where he could have tried to make the difference and instead waited for a sprint that I did not see a path to victory for him in this sprint. And I think you could see that frustration as he crossed the line. Very demonstrative with kind of his gesturing, banging the bars when he crossed. And I just, I almost don't feel like he knows what he's doing here, right? Like he is a guy who is in an Ineos kit who is not super focused on supporting a GC rider, but he's not at the same time free to do whatever. Like, I feel like there are expectations. I just don't know what they are. There were a lot of weird articles in the press ahead of the tour, like no one is going to define my GC, what it means to be a GC rider or something like that. No one's going to define my tour. And I just feel like Pidcock's in a place where he doesn't even really know what he's doing here. I suspect he will come out of this race in very good shape, and I suspect he will do very well at the Olympics in the mountain biking. But that still doesn't kind of answer the question, what is he going to do as a road racer with the rest of his career?
Yeah. What you're saying about today's stage was really true as well. I mean, I also thought, honestly, the Stuyven move we saw today, also I wondered if he might not have just waited for the sprint, because he's got a sprint. And I think he would have had a chance against Torres. I don't know that he would have beaten him, but I think he would have had a chance.
I wonder if he knew what the finish looked like, because he looked very good until like a little uphill, like 2-3% ramp in the finish. And then it was over. And I think maybe he just didn't know that was coming.
Yeah. All right. That's the tour so far. 9 stages. And we are heading into the first rest day. We will talk about what's coming up at the tour. But before we do that, let's take stock of what's been going on around the world of cycling. And that's going to start with mentioning the horrible, tragic news from the Tour of Austria, where Andre Drege, a 25-year-old Norwegian rider, died after crashing on a descent. And I don't know that we have that much more to say other than this is just a horrible, horrible thing that happened. And our thoughts are with, his team, Co-op Repsol, family, everybody that was involved at the race. And just a real reminder of how dangerous the sport is. And also it's happened that a rider has died in a race. I would say a lot for a sport in the past few years. Yeah. One time is too many, right? But 2 times in 2 or 3 years is way too many.
I used to feel like it was like a decade. It was kind of a decade event. And it is very, we had a death at the Tour de Suisse last year in a similar situation. Again, the details aren't super clear, but like it does highlight the dangers and kind of makes you wonder what, if anything else, can be done to improve things, to improve safety.
Yeah, totally.
And, while still preserving the fact that this is a sport that takes place in the open, on open roads that people can go to and ride, and that cars drive on 364 days a year as normal. So, and
quite often on mountain roads where, yeah. I mean, like we said, I don't know if there's that much more for us to say, but it's a horrible, tragic thing that happened, and thoughts are with everyone involved. The women's Giro also going on as of today. Not that much to talk about yet because there has only been the one stage. So I don't know that there's too much for us to analyze and break down. Elisa Longo Borghini won the opening TT and did it quite in a quite close battle with Grace Brown by 1 second. And that's all we've had so far at the women's Giro. Obviously, Wheel Talk has plenty more, and they actually have daily shows where they've got several riders actually, providing insight from the day of the race. So head on over to the Wheel Talk feed, check that out. And remember, you probably already know this if you're listening to this podcast, but that feed is its own thing. So you got to go seek it out now. We are all on our own feeds now. So head on over to Wheel Talk to check that out.
We have a former co-podcaster coming into that race.
She,
in very good form.
She went and won a race in Germany.
Yeah. Won a stage race in Germany.
Yes, that's right.
Took
the overall at the Lotto Thuringen Ladies Tour to prove her form going. And we're talking about Ruth Edwards. I don't know if we actually said her name. Former podcaster on this show, and decided she was, going to go back to winning instead of talking about bike races. And yes, she looks really good coming into this race. I think the form is there. She was 8th in that TT today, and Human Powered Health with a real contender for the overall. And yeah, she's got a history of success. She's won a stage at the Giro in the past. I think back in 18 was her previous win. So yeah, I also think it's fair to say that we're hoping she does well. Like that's okay, right? I don't have to act like I don't want to.
We should be. We can be
upfront about that. She's been literally a fellow host. Yeah. Okay. So good luck to Ruth and everyone else. Head on over to the Wheel Talk podcast for their daily minisodes, as they are. I think that's what Abby's calling them. A lot of good stuff in there. All right, last thing we're going to do is preview what's coming up at the Tour de France, where after Monday's rest day, racing action will resume with a sprinter-friendly stage 10. Maybe we'll see Philipsen get his win. Maybe Cav gets another win. Maybe that little hill at the finish will be a reason that Biniam Girmay is fresher than everyone. Yeah. Sprint stage, though, almost certainly. Stage 11, to me, is a classic breakaway day in that it has some climbs near the finish, but none of them are super hard, so probably a breakaway day. Stage 12, hard to say whether that's a sprint or a breakaway stage, but again, a day for the stage hunters. And
I would lean towards sprint, given this year's tour. It's not been a lot of breakaways.
One thing we haven't talked too much about. There's a story over at escapecollective.com about this fact. It's been a very... The breakaways have been caught a lot on some of these hit or miss days. And the sprinters have worked hard to bring them back. I think part of that is a function of there being so many sprinters at the race. And there being guys like Biniam Girmay and Arnaud Delis who can win that tougher day. And so their teams will commit. You'll see Lotto and you'll see Intermarché at the front. Stage 13, yet again, breakaway day, sprint day, hard to say. Hills near the finish. Yeah, not sure about that. Finally, stage 14, some GC action. So, there's going to be a pretty substantial gap between now and the next GC day. But you will get it on stage 14 because they're going to go over the Tourmalet and they're going to finish on an ore category climb with an 8% average gradient. And it's kind of a stair-step type climb where there are some very steep sections that should be good launching pads for attacks. Looking forward to that one. That's 14. And then 15, another probable, almost certainly, GC day with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 climbs that are either first or beyond categorization or category.
Where are you getting 5? Oh, well, yeah, okay.
They start on the Perisord. Yep, they start on the Perisord. They do... That's the which I like because it means we're probably going to get a breakaway full of climbers for stage 15. And there's your second week.
Not out of the realm of possibility that this is the breakaway wins the stage. And,
for sure. Yeah. It looks like a breakaway friendly kind of day for the stage. Hard to control. Yeah, good breakaway is going to get away early, but I think it's going to have some GC implications as well. Finish
on Plateau de Baille, which is one of my favorites, at least viewing wise.
It's a pretty steep, hard, like nowhere to hide kind of climb. And I think we're going to get, especially after so much previous climbing on the day, because they are doing 4 Cat 1s before they get there, could wear some guys out. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to at the tour. Hope you get a chance to watch it and hope you get a chance to follow all the coverage at escapecollective.com here on our podcast network. And if you're not a member already, now is a great time to become one. I mean, you don't want to miss out on all of the stories. You want to be able to listen to the members-only shows. And on top of all that, you can become a member for all of $1 during the Tour de France. So head over to escapecollective.com/TDF. Sign up, support this show. We need your support. It's like we really need it, and it makes a huge difference. And if you are a member, we sure appreciate you. And we're going to keep bringing you the coverage that hopefully you're enjoying for the rest of the race. So we'll be back in a week. And in the meantime, you got Wheel Talk and the Tour Dailies and everything else. Hope you get a chance to enjoy all that. I'm Dane Cash. Who are you? And what was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano. And that was the How the Race Was Won podcast.